Welcome to Autistic People Talking, a podcast where autistic people talk. Hi everyone, my name is Claire and this is my channel, Woodshed Theory. Here, I make content about what it is like to live as an adult on the autism spectrum and whatever else feels good to me. So if that sounds good to you, or if you're feeling particularly gracious today, and I hope that you are, please go ahead and click the subscribe button, ring the bell. I almost forgot to mention that I put out videos a few times a week, so click the like and the share. Help out your good friend Claire. Welcome everyone to one of my favorite things, the podcast Autistic People Talking, a podcast where autistic people talk. Today, I'm coming to you with a very special guest, the creator of the YouTube channel Autism from the Inside, Paul Micallef. Welcome, Paul. Thanks for being on the show. I'd love for you to share with us how you're connected to the autism community.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Um, yeah, connected to the community. That's a great way of thinking about it. Because especially for me, discovering my own autism, it wasn't really just a personal thing. It was a gateway. Some people use that word in a negative context. It was a gateway to um, to getting connected with the autism community. So that's been really good. I've met lots of people in Melbourne here in person, which has been great. Increasingly, especially over COVID, there's more and more of an international community. I've had the privilege of attending conferences and things like that, where I can meet other advocates from all over the world and things like that as well. So yeah, it's really nice to be able to connect with people with a shared experience, especially after a lifetime of feeling like I was the only one having the experience. Suddenly, we're all coming out of the woodwork.
I know, I'm so glad as well. I always say that when I started my channel a few years ago, I never anticipated a community. I was coming from a place of isolation, so the community aspect was a complete surprise to me, positive surprise. I always thought it was going to be like a very negative experience and I would have to brace for that. And instead, it's been quite the opposite. So I'm pretty grateful for that. I would love for you to share with us a little bit about your diagnosis story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no worries. It was a bit of a unexpected thing for me. The turning point for me to start taking it seriously was I read a book by John Elder Robinson, Look Me in the Eye, which was very entertaining, but also hit a little bit close to home with some things that I was resonating very strongly with and wondering why he was explaining these things to the readers as if the readers wouldn't understand. Um, so I basically picked up the phone and found a local support group, and just everything snowballed from there. The actual diagnosis part was a little bit more tricky. Fortunately, and extremely fortunately, because I hear so many stories from people who have had such challenges with this. But I got a personal recommendation to a specific psychologist who was exactly who I was looking for. So she messaged back saying, "Look, sorry, I'm really busy. Here's someone else." And I talked my way into a once-off meeting with her. And she essentially confirmed in like the first 30 seconds. It's like, yep, I can clearly see, like, here, have a fidget thing. I'm like, wait a minute. Why? What do you mean? You're telling me it's obvious? How can it be obvious? No one, like, I'm 30 years old and no one said this my entire life. How can you tell me it's obvious in the first 30 seconds? So I was a little bit skeptical with that, but it was still really uh, validating to talk to a professional about it, especially in those early days when
Mm.
I wasn't really sure what I was doing, where can I go to get trustworthy information, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I was pretty lucky in that regard. And she actually advised me not to go through with the full diagnostic process,
Mm.
um, which was interesting. She basically said, look, you can do it if you want. And for some people, it's really great for a self-awareness tool and for extra validation and to have that piece of paper and everything like that. But she said, look, it's really expensive. It'll take you a lot of time. So we can do that if you want, but otherwise I'd advise against it. You're not going to get any support in your age and condition. Yeah.
So many things sound familiar to me. It's interesting that you were like, just give me one appointment, and then in 30 seconds, the conclusion was made. I'm not sure if that is necessarily how it happened for me, but it's interesting that the advice was you can go ahead with the full assessment if you'd like, but not everybody needs that for themselves. And also, all of the things that we talk about throughout the community, right? The cost, the wait time, the lack of resources. And is that something you want to go through? So that's really interesting that that was the case for you as well. So your reaction to the diagnosis, what was that like?
Oh, it was really relieving for the most part. It felt like suddenly I had a story that made sense. My life made sense through this new lens, essentially. So I was very excited about that. I wanted to basically tell everyone I knew straight away, which is essentially how this blog started. I started with a written blog, and then transitioned to a YouTube channel shortly after that, which was a big decision. And I had a lot of people saying, are you sure you want to be publicly autistic on the internet?
It's a
But
big deal.
yeah, I was really excited and I wanted to tell everyone. And I guess part of it was I felt understood for the first time in a way that I never had been before. So that was just really excited. I just wanted to share it with people. That was the only thing on my mind is just share it with people.
Interesting. Now, the sharing it with people, was that because you wanted to spread awareness or you wanted more understanding? What was the catalyst behind wanting to share it?
It was a personal reason. That was my personal connection strategy at the time. I wanted people in my life to understand me. And at the time, my strategy for that was just be an open book and tell everyone everything.
Hmm,
So I guess I kind of hoped that by sharing it publicly, it would be easier and more efficient than trying to have lots and lots of individual conversations.
I can see how that would be the case. Then you can kind of skip all of that by just putting the information for others to consume somewhere. So I can see how that would be the case. How long were you doing the blog before you started the channel?
Not long. I started the YouTube channel fairly early on. I think I might have had one or two blog articles first, and then anyone who has seen my origin story, for lack of a better word, knows that a big part of that early thing was shaving my head for charity. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I had dreadlocks for 15 years, and
Yeah,
part
you
of
did.
my personal unmasking process was letting go of those as well. So that was a huge um, step. And I was raising money, and I thought, what a great way to spread awareness with that by making a YouTube video about it.
Absolutely. And I think you kind of spoke about in some of those videos about how you kind of felt like the having the dreads tied into some of the masking that you were doing. Is that correct?
Definitely, definitely. They were literally my presentation, my mask, the way that I was showing myself to the world.
Hmm.
And they were insanely effective socially and in lots of other public places. They just effortlessly communicated what would have been challenging to use words to communicate, right? It communicated confidence, it communicated that I'm interesting, it communicated that I'm a bit different, and it facilitated people to actually come and talk to me and connect with me.
I think I've seen that. It'd be interesting to research it further, but I think I've seen that with others as well, where the choice of what you wear and how you present in public is very intentional. And it it's supposed to, I think, even if it's not on purpose, you're trying to say something so that other people will know how to perceive you and how to interact with you, maybe as a way to skip some small talk. I'm not sure.
Mm.
Or feel connected immediately with people who might be like you. So I can understand that thinking. I know that there's been times in my life where that was a big part of how I dressed, how I presented myself was all part of masking my autism. When you did cut your hair, was that a hard transition for you because it had been so long?
I mean, it was a very abrupt transition.
Yeah.
Um, so it was easy in a way, easy like ripping off a band-aid, but also really abrupt, really difficult. It was, but that's kind of that's my style. I like to be intense about things, and when I put my mind to something, I just put my head down and do it. So it suited me to bring everything to a head like that and make it a big deal and process everything all at once
Mm.
rather than trying to spread it out over time. And of course, it was really only the first step. Um, Looking back to some of my earlier videos, yeah, it's incredible how much I've learned in the last nearly 10 years now. It's coming up to 10 years.
I was about to say, I was just checking today before our conversation. In March, it will be 10 years on YouTube for you, and that is a big deal.
Mm.
Congratulations. You ran the
Yeah.
race.
Yeah. I was definitely not very serious in the beginning, just and like, wow, 6 people watching my video. Isn't that amazing? But I was just so surprised how many people resonated with what I thought was a fairly unique experience.
Yes.
So that continues to surprise me.
Right. Sometimes I will share something that I'm going through, and when I get the responses of, "Oh, I'm so glad that you talked about that or spoke about that. That's exactly what I'm going through, and I didn't know that I wasn't alone." It's really shocking sometimes. Um, it both makes you feel kind of normal within your own space, but also I feel like the feeling we're so often it's it's so often that we feel alone. So the idea that we're not alone and there's actually a very large group of people who may also feel exactly the same is, for me, constantly mind blowing. Um, I'm always worried I'm going to be met with um, negativity about how I'm feeling or not misunderstanding, and yet it's usually a hey, thanks for saying this, thanks for voicing this. I'm going through this too. It sounds like you found that to be the case as well from your shaking your head yes.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Would you tell us a little bit about how your life changed after diagnosis? I know you said it was super positive for you. Um, a lot of what we talk about on my channel is why is it important to find out that you're on the autism spectrum, whether that be self-diagnosis or formal diagnosis. How has your life changed? It can be in negative or positive ways.
So I'm tempted to say my life changed more than most, but that might not necessarily be true. My life changed a lot, in basically every domain
Mm,
because I was already on a break at the time. I'd been homeless and unemployed by choice for about 2 years at that point. And so I was in the process of rebuilding a life anyway.
interesting.
And it really gave me a new direction there. So the very first thing I did was get involved with the community and start volunteering for a charity here in Melbourne. Started my blog and all of that kind of stuff. I'd already been very interested in personal development, things like emotional intelligence and other kind of sort of personal growth areas. So it fast tracked all of that in terms of teaching me about neurodiversity and helping me understand myself at a completely new level. Like
Mm,
I'd had all of these sort of mainstream psychological ways of understanding personality types and things like that. And now with neurodiversity and understanding sensory processing and other kinds of things like that, it just allowed for so much more self-awareness and so much more practical self-awareness, like how long can I stay in a cafe before I need to go home? That kind of self-awareness. So there's the self-awareness aspect, which was huge. Um, there's the professional aspect, which was huge. I was initially planning to go in, find a way to start teaching emotional intelligence. And then the autism tidal wave kind of swept me up to shift course on that a little bit. But probably the biggest change, though, is helping me understand my relationship patterns,
mm,
uh,
yeah.
especially to do with masking. I've got a framework in mind. There's like masking and camouflaging and then stonewalling on the other side.
Hmm.
And I realized I'd done both. Like sometimes I go out into society and I do everything I'm supposed to do, and I've got lots of confidence and energy, and I do all that stuff. And then sometimes I say, no, that's it. I've had enough. I'm not doing that anymore. If you want to be my friend, you can come find me and you
Mm.
can scale a 10-foot wall and, fight a dragon before you get to speak to me. And if you do that, then I'll know that you're worth speaking to. And unsurprisingly, that's a bit isolating because most people don't do that. They say, oh, he's put himself behind a 10-foot wall. Maybe he doesn't want to speak. Maybe I should leave him alone. And so recognizing patterns like that has really helped me develop much stronger intimate connections with individuals, friends, and family, and also community connections as well. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing.
I would agree with you there. For me personally, the opportunity to have deeper relationships for the first time. Um, I I like you always felt like I was in tune with myself and others, and I don't know if you felt this. I felt like I was a good communicator, only to learn that I what maybe I wasn't, and that things were very one-sided, and I wasn't taking the steps that I needed be to communicate with the world around me, whether it be a neurotypical person or a neurodiverse person. I think it's really interesting that you said that you were interested in emotional intelligence and getting into that before your autism wave, because I do think that many people who are on the spectrum do take a special interest in learning to communicate and sense the emotions of others better. I think this is just a guess, but I think maybe because when you're undiagnosed, you just really, don't know what's not working, and you really want to
Yeah.
strive to be understood and to understand other people better. So that really makes good sense to me.
One of the first sort of little stereotypes that I related to when I first discovered about autism is the little Aspie anthropologist, who is basically studying this weird species called humans, trying to figure out how they work, making lots of notes and learning lots of things and making lots of observations, but not actually engaging with peers. So that was definitely the start of it for me. And I'm actually writing a book on this at the moment, which is really exciting. Sharing some of the the changes in how I'm thinking about this now from those early days of following my instinct and just making lots of observations of people and trying to learn human behavior to actually getting in there and finding easy ways to socialize with people that don't require all of that effort.
Hmm.
So yeah, what I've learned from the diagnosis is that my strategy is not how other people do it. That's not how most of the population do it. This whole socializing thing that I found so challenging. So
Hmm.
um, I've always been interested in like the data collection and analysis side of it. And I'm trying to let that go a little bit and move into the actual practice side. And that was kind of what my dreadlocks did for me. Instead of sitting back and trying to figure out how to be included, I was just suddenly included. And then I just had to respond to people asking me questions and talking to me at parties and asking me about my dreadlocks and all of these new social things that I had just no previous experience of.
Congratulations on working on a book. That's exciting news. I know that it sounds like it would be a very helpful read to a lot of us. Something that I noticed that you said was processing from the beginning of your journey until now. That's something I've been going through as well. I'm about five five years on now, and I have really been noticing when I first learned about autism and that it applied to me. I A lot of changes happened very quickly, and I think I thought that maybe after a year or two I would get there, uh, only to learn 5 years on that there is no getting there. Would you agree with that? Like, what is your outlook on kind of learning to embrace yourself and doing what works for you? Do you think it's something that happens quickly, or has it been a journey for you?
It's definitely a journey. One of my personal core values is continual improvement.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really important to me personally. So I've always been had an emphasis, I've always had an emphasis on that. But even apart from that, just looking back a couple of years for me, even like it's nearly 10 years since discovering my own autism. And compared to this time last year, I've discovered so much. So that's 10 years in. Is there any reason to believe that 20 years in will be different? I don't know. I'll have to speak to someone who's 20 years in, but I suspect that the personal growth and the journey doesn't ever actually finish as such. And the other reason it doesn't finish is because the world around us is constantly changing. So if the world around me didn't change, I could maybe theoretically learn everything about myself in this situation. But then I'll go into a new situation, or we'll have like a global pandemic, like some of us might remember. And suddenly there's all of this new stuff about myself that's coming out in a completely new environment that I've never had to experience before. In that sense, that's part of why the journey doesn't ever actually end, because we are constantly getting older, constantly making new relationships and new phases of life and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for me as well, something I've always struggled with is even when you've been through a similar situation, every situation is so different to me. And I get very anxious about it if it's not exactly how it was before. and then there's a change in a situation, I feel like I've got to process everything all over again, relearn it, work through my anxieties about it, and figure out where I fit in that situation. And that can be pretty difficult. I I'm sure you've spoken with many people over the years, and I've had an opportunity to speak with several who are all at different points, year-wise with their diagnosis. And I think I can confidently say it goes on forever. There's not a I've reached this point. I feel really, no more growth, no more reflection. I'm like solid on who I am, and no, I just don't think that's how our brains are wired.
One,
Constantly taking in new information all the time.
one of my favorite phrases is, if you're not growing, you're dying.
True. I like that. One of the things I did want to talk to you about, if it's okay, I know that most of your videos center around autism and resources for people in the community. What about other special interests? Do you have any other special interests where you'd say, like, yeah, I'm really into that?
A couple. So it's a bit fuzzy because I've built my life and profession around my special interest of emotional intelligence. So
Mm-hmm.
when most people ask me what my special interest is, it's currently adult psychological development,
Cool.
which is a little bit like child psychological development that goes through stages, except it doesn't stop, and there's a lot more stages as an adult that we go through. And so yeah, that's insanely fascinating and has really helped me understand other people and recognize how a conversation is not a conversation out of context. Like I'm having a conversation with you at the moment, and where you're coming from, your own beliefs and values and cultures and your own personal growth journey is very, very important to how we are communicating and what I can
Yeah.
expect and things like that. So that's kind of the nerdy special interest that I've always had and is still going very, very strong. I also play the drums,
Cool.
which is fun. I have a couple of little drums at home. I also own a handpan, which is like an upside down wok that looks like a UFO and sounds like a Jamaican steel drum,
Oh, cool.
which is really fun. Um, I also taken up rock climbing recently, which
Neat.
is which I started during COVID. I was looking for something fun to do that didn't require other people. So I got into
I'm
bouldering.
laughing because I tried bouldering, and one of the ones that I tried, the starting position was kind of like on the ground. You couldn't really, you had to kind of like pull yourself. I couldn't
Yeah,
get off
yeah.
the ground. I couldn't get off the ground. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at myself.
Yeah, no, it's still I'm a little bit taller than average,
Hmm.
which means I sometimes have that same problem even after bouldering for several years. Sometimes there'll be a problem and it will be so close to the ground. Like, look, I'm literally sitting on the ground. There's no way I can do this with the ground in the way. If you take away the ground, I might be able to, but
Yeah. Are you into like going to the climbing gym, or do you like to climb outside?
mostly inside. It's
Yeah.
a lot more predictable. It's a lot easier. It's a lot cheaper. I can go
Hmm.
much frequently. I can go a couple of times a week with no problem. Outdoor is also fun. It just takes a lot more planning and time and things like that.
I think I can see why you would be really into it. It is a lot of problem solving. Do they call it a problem?
They
They
call it a
call it
problem.
that's what they call it. I know some. So I'm trying to take my knowledge. I know some. I have tried it. I can't climb very high. I wouldn't say I'm afraid of heights if you asked me, but when my body is given heights,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
lose it. So bouldering would be for me if it's something I wanted to continue. So um I like that aspect of it where it's like here's a set out problem for you to solve. If somebody's listening and they don't know what I mean by problem, basically at a gym, the staff will set up um, different holds for you to climb, and usually there's only your goal is to get to the top. And usually there is only a few ways to do that, depending on who you are and what your skill sets are, which is why it's kind of like solving the problem to get to the top. So that's cool.
And it really appealed to my mechanical engineering brain.
Hmm.
So I felt like I had a little bit of an advantage going in there because I could just my brain can just see forces and moments and things like that. And yeah, so that was fun.
Yeah. Plus, it will work out every single muscle in your entire body, even that you didn't know you had. So it's pretty intense. And music is a great one too. So many people on the spectrum rely on music as a way to express their feelings and connect with others. So that's really neat. Any other special interest? I mean, that's a lot. So
That's
those are
probably
the big ones.
enough for now. Yeah, I also like walking. I've walked the Camino de Santiago twice, which is
Wow. I'm not
uh,
familiar with that, but it sounds long.
yeah, it's about 1,000 kilometers or so.
Wow. Okay.
It really depends. You can do, I think you only have to do about 200, only 200 kilometers. Um,
Is that a solo thing that you did?
uh, Sort of. I mean, I did it solo, but you meet so many other people that
Yeah.
it's not a lonely experience. It's just a solo experience meeting in a group. So some people go in a partner with a partner or in a group, but I went by myself.
And you camp as you go.
You can camp, but there's also just really basic accommodations along the way.
That's cool. Thank you for
And
sharing.
you can really make it whatever you want. So it can be a couple of days. Some people walk for months. So it's a bit of a European tradition. A lot of people start from their front door,
Oh,
which
wow.
is incredible for me to hear. I met a man who started from his front door in Belgium and walked 90 days. I'm like, okay, crazy, but amazing at the same time.
I suppose we're all on our own journeys. I hope he found what he was looking for. I in in the time we have left, I wanted to talk to you about your experience sharing and being on YouTube. I know that, as I mentioned before, you have been a resource for so many people. Maybe a good way to put it was you are one of the autism OGs of YouTube. What has the almost 10-year experience been like for you? I mean, that's a
Uh,
big question. So,
yeah, it's been a big journey. I definitely did not envisage this point in the beginning. Um, in the beginning, it was just a way that I could make a couple of videos to raise some money for charity,
right.
essentially.
Hmm.
Um, and then I had the time and I thought I would share some experiences. I felt like sharing the human side of autism was really important because everything I was reading at the time, it's a lot better now, but we've still got a bit of a way to go. But
Mm,
10 years ago, all of the autism resources were very medical based. And it just, as medicine is a science, and they take the personality out and they talk about things in a very objective, sterile kind of way. And so I really wanted to bring the human experience to that. And it's just so unpredictable. Like I would spend so long creating this one video and then no one watches it. And then I record a 2 minute thing of me talking about nothing, and then suddenly it's got a million views on it. So it has been challenging for me personally, just with the unpredictability.
Yeah.
I went from having a salaried engineering job where I know exactly what I'm doing every day. I know exactly, how much money I've got and what my promotions are going to look like and all that kind of stuff, to working on YouTube where you have no idea what is going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
Um,
I've
and
I know many people have that experience, especially the I put X amount of hours in, and in my brain that means more time spent, more success, more outcome, but that is not true when it comes to posting YouTube videos at all.
Absolutely not true. And I recently decided to record a video the day after a migraine.
Interesting.
And my thinking was, this is actually like people are seeing a side here that is impossible to replicate.
Mm,
And it won't be better if I wait until I'm feeling better and put more effort into it and put more time into it and make it more polished and do all these other things. So it's a really challenging mindset shift that challenges my perfectionism because I want to make everything better. I want to spend more time on things. And YouTube just says, we don't care how long you spent on it. We care how many people thought it was fun to watch.
mm,
So challenging, sometimes rewarding, but often sometimes quite isolating because I don't, like you were saying that my channel was a big part of your story, right? But I don't know that.
right.
So, every once in a while, someone says, hello, and tells me, that that they really appreciate the channel. I'm like, well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. But it's hard to connect with that because I'm on this side of the screen, and then there's numbers of people watching it, but I don't know anything about the numbers. Like I don't know anything about the people behind the numbers unless we've had a personal interaction.
Yeah.
So that is one of the reasons why I try and do a lot of in-person stuff as well, in terms of conferences and social events, and even just online workshops where it's interactive. It's almost like I do that for me because I need the feedback. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just throwing stuff into the void. And yes,
Right.
people appreciate it, but there's I need the feedback.
I think the parasocial relationship aspect of it is really interesting to me, because so many people feel like they know you and you're a part of their lives, but you don't know them. And that kind of puts you in an awkward place. Or at least it does for me. But I also I struggle with levels of relationship like many autistic
Mm,
people. I want to know the people use who want to connect with me on my channel
mm,
a little bit better. But I also struggle with the weight of different relationships. So it's hard to find a balance of how much can I expose myself to and how much do I need to take a step back.
mm.
That can be, I think, pretty difficult finding a balance. Have you found that with like a difficulty in finding a balance, even with doing conferences and online meetings and stuff like that?
Online is really hard because there's just millions of people online.
Mm,
And I struggle with more than like two people at a time. So online is really hard, but in person is much, much, much easier. So
yeah,
I can reasonably easily pay attention to the one person I'm talking to at the moment and have a meaningful interaction with one person at a time. It's just that online, it's rarely the case that it's only one person. Um, which is one of the reasons that I've never really used social media that much. I just don't really get a lot out of it personally. Even during COVID, my friends and I knew lots of people who were socializing on Zoom, and I just didn't join. It didn't do anything for
Mm.
me
Hmm.
because it felt like I had to pay attention,
Yeah.
and it's just really challenging to connect when there's so many people. And conversely, so easy to connect when there's only one person, for me
Yeah.
personally. So I don't know how I ended up online. Your guess is as good as mine.
I myself I've kind of had to step back from the live stream culture. I will do them from time to time, but I've had to put a very strict limit for myself to not be there for, I say an hour, hour 15 tops. Because first of all, when you live stream, you have to be like engaged, and that is a lot. Reading the comments, like trying not to have dead air is a lot. And then I found that anything longer than an hour and 15 minutes, even if I'm having a good time, which would make me want to stay. Oh, this is so fun. I want to stay. When it finishes, I don't feel good about the situation.
Mm,
So I've
yeah.
had to give myself a boundary. I immediately like need to go lie down and process. It's a lot.
Another favorite saying of mine is boundaries are good, boundaries keep us safe. It's like the fence between you and the cliff. It's like when I get to the fence, I stop because you could go a little bit further, maybe, but it starts to get dangerous and you
Yeah.
don't want to fall off a cliff. So,
Yeah, I struggle now. I'm much better at setting boundaries now, but I'm still at the point where it's like, will you accept my boundary?
yeah.
And I'm like, it's my boundary. I'm allowed to say
Hmm.
this is what I'm okay with. And that should be fine. Um, what about where your channel is at now and where you see it going, and uh do you hope to continue, and do you have any like plans coming up for the future?
I hope to shift a little bit more into community interaction. So,
Hmm.
the Autism from the Inside website, for example, we have a membership section for our webinars and community events and things like that. And so building up that ability for people to connect with me and then be part of the community and then connect with each other, because that way I kind of feel like I'm able to provide people with something that I can't personally provide. Like I can't personally provide a relationship with someone or provide a community. The community can provide a community, and meeting individuals in that community can provide those relationships. So I feel like that's really important. Um, I'm hoping to do another lived experience summit next year.
Cool.
I had to take a year off this year to focus on writing my book. But I'm really passionate about those because again, it's just about sharing a variety of voices to get the lived experience of autism sort of out there in the public so that people can hear it and relate to it and say, hey, that maybe that is me. Maybe I should get involved and connected into the autism community. There's my book coming up, which is really exciting.
Congrats. That's
I'm
a big deal.
That's a big deal. I'm hoping to finish the actual writing by early 2025 and hoping to publish sometime in 2025 as well. There's so much content in that I'm really excited about, and I can't really share it very effectively in little bits because
Yeah.
it's a big narrative and everything relates to everything else. So putting it all in a book is hopefully going to facilitate the ability to share more about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not directly autism related, but it's a common experience that most of us in the autistic community have experienced around trying to connect with people and trying to understand the emotions of other people. And work with that kind of stuff without burning out. That's the key. How do I socialize and do this expected thing without burning out?
Well, that's information I'd like to have, so I can't wait. I know that so many people will find that to be helpful information. So I'm excited to see that and I'm excited for you. I want to thank you for taking some time to meet with me today and be on the podcast. I did want to ask you the thing that I ask everyone before we wrap up, and that is if you had a short message for the autism community, what would that be?
Short message. I think it would be something about unmasking, that it's a process, not something you just do instantly. And it's almost a skill. Unmasking is a new skill that I'm going to commit myself to learning over time. And with that skill, it's possible to be authentically myself and succeed in the world at the same time. Like
Yeah.
I used to think that that was an either or. I could do what society wants me to do, or I could be myself. What if I can be myself and socialize, or be myself and have a job, or be myself and interact with the world without burning out and things like that? So it is possible. We just need to unlearn a lot of things that we were taught, especially around traditional social skills. I could go on a bit of a rant about that, but yeah,
Well, I think that that was a wonderful message, and thank you for sharing that. It's something that I feel like I'm continuing to learn. As I mentioned, every time I think I'm there, there's further to go.
yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on today and taking some time with us. I really appreciate it. I encourage not that anyone here, I'm assuming, doesn't know who Paul is, doesn't know who you are, hasn't seen your channel, but go check out Autism from the Inside. If you haven't, I will link that below. I hope that everyone has a wonderful day, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.